Hello and welcome to Leviathan News. Today is December 9th. We're like well in our into the holiday spirit here, and I'm your host Samuel McCulloch. Today is a great day for us as we have on first-time guest Omer Goldberg, who is the founder and CEO of Chaos Labs. Omer, welcome.
Sam, thanks for having me. It's a long time coming. We've been going back and forth in Telegram for over a year, so glad that we can make it happen today.
Yeah. Now, I think that you guys operate in one of the kind of most underreported areas of crypto because, and we'll get into this later, but Chaos Labs itself secures billions of dollars of transaction volume, and in addition to that, loan volume as well too. It's pretty incredible what your systems and other systems like it provide as like the backbone for risk management, and now oracles for the entire blockchain crypto ecosystem.
Yeah. I think it's, sometimes the risk and security are underreported and maybe less sexy, but it's if it's doing its job and doing it well, it's humming along in the background. And it's something that's top of mind for any kind of serious engineering team. And we've had the privilege of really working with the top applications and exchanges across every vertical over the past 3+ years. So teams like Aave, GMX, DYDX, Jupiter, EtherFi, Renzo, Layer Zero, Venus. I don't want to leave out any names, but it's a long list, and it's a privilege to be trusted and to kind of work with them and securing them.
Yeah. So before we jump into that, I was looking at your background, and you seem to be like a serial entrepreneur. You got the bug, and I understand that. Like you got to build something. Like it goes all the way back to you just coming out of university, probably even at university as well too. But like you've had a couple of startups in a couple of different like verticals. When did you figure out that you like had that itch? You just had to like go down the hard path of building something.
Very early. I think just like my whole life, I was building things, and I think I was interested in startups before I knew what a startup was. So like even in middle school, just like, side hustles, and high school, just different ideas that I was excited to see grow. I think after the army, I spent my life between New York City and Tel Aviv. There's a really strong startup scene culture in Tel Aviv. A lot of very kind of deep tech startups around cybersecurity, machine learning, AI. And I was just seeing kind of like the older generation, people who were like with me in the army and maybe high school, a few years older, and the things that they were going on to building. And it was just very clear for me that that's what I wanted. So really, I think it's been like over a decade since I started my first company in the technology space, and had a few different kind of cycles and products that I built over that time. But I think there was never any doubt. I think after kind of a few early tries, Facebook had just acquired their first company in Israel, actually like a cybersecurity company, and we're opening up offices. And I just closed my second company after a run of like 3 years, and was approached by them to be one of the early engineers to join the Tel Aviv site. And I said, okay, like this is a good opportunity to go and learn how software is built at scale. I've done a lot of the 0 to 1 stuff, but I know that I'm also interested in getting to kind of the stage after. So really went to Facebook and Instagram, like knowing that I was going there to maximize on like learning and driving impact over that time. Ended up spending 4 years there before starting Chaos.
And how was that change of like, you started 2 companies officially that I saw. There was Joyride and then Mindflow.ai. Like,
Yeah,
you're the founder. It's all your ideas. You're raising money. Like, you're the one that's in charge every day. And then you shift to this like large, like mega institutional beast with thousands of departments, and there's bureaucracy and politics, but they have a finished product, right? They have billions of users. What was it like for you?
So I'll start with what sounds like a cliche. I think everybody who's ever like at a big company, or many people say it was a big company, but my department felt like a startup type of thing. But I think in our case, like it was really true. So the first like 2 years working in Tel Aviv, I was actually at Facebook, but working on a project that was not affiliated with the core app. So it was called Express Wi-Fi, which was part of a larger initiative to build internet connectivity in emerging markets. So spending a ton of time in Africa, India, Southeast Asia, these different regions. And really our main goal was there are two things. A, how do we bring people online? So we're spending a lot of time in like these rural areas and villages around larger cities and just building literal physical internet networks to get them on the internet. And then there was, so those were people who were unserved, who had no access to the internet. But there's also a concept of underserved, where today I think something like 90% of total data on the internet is video content. And if you're like connecting to the internet on a network that has like 2G speeds or that is very congested, you can't load video. So like, technically you're connected, but are you really, right? So for areas that had networks that were just at capacity or totally congested, improving the experience there, that was a really small team. I think like end to end, we were like 40 people building that solution. And obviously we had the privilege of being able to rely on Facebook infrastructure for a lot of our products, but just the way that it was built. So I was right after the army flying out to like Kenya or Tanzania, meeting with the local CEO of Vodafone and like really just planning with them, like how are we going to, where are we going to place the dishes for this mesh network that we're standing up. And it was very, very kind of startup-y, I guess, in that sense. So different than typical Facebook. But because of that, I had like an opportunity to kind of move back to the New York offices and ultimately join Meta and then Instagram, which is very much traditional, like Facebook, or at least like what you think of when you think of Meta, and did work there for a few years with some of the groups here too.
Yeah, it's quite interesting how you're working with these like mesh networks with underserved communities, which is like one of the kind of, I guess, claims or goals of Ethereum in general is to bring finance to people who have only like 2G speeds, right? Because you can put it into a messenger, right? You don't have to have fast internet to be able to transact value. You don't have to be able to pull up a website. You can just do it through like Facebook Messenger, hopefully at one point, or like Telegram or WhatsApp or one of these other services. So it's interesting to see that continuity kind of come around into like DeFi, which you're supporting today, which is supporting like billions of dollars of loans and transaction volume across the board.
That was actually one of the things that got me like very, very highly convicted on DeFi. So I think the other thing that a lot of these people don't have besides internet connectivity is access to banking services. So literally, like in many of these villages, they don't have like birth certificates. There's not a banking there's not like a banking location within 100 kilometers radius of their village, which means they have no access to savings accounts. They only work in cash. Like oftentimes they would, literally sleep like under what they make. And what has emerged in these countries is a form of electronic money called, there are different versions of it, but like M-Pesa is a good example. So how it would work is that you would make cash in your village. You would literally take that cash to your local teller who's like, sitting behind, like in a kiosk behind like barred windows, give them the cash, they would count it in front of you, and then they would actually charge credits associated with your phone number. So your cell phone number is like your wallet or your unique identifier. And then every few days, the phone companies would come and kind of pick up the cash. And this service is provided by the phone companies like Vodafone. So in, I think like early 2018, like 2019, when I was hearing the rumblings of decentralized finance and democratizing access to financial services, it like really spoke to me, because I was like, yeah, like having this on a blockchain, having this on an app where they're not taking crazy cuts and fees on these things. Like it's not a use case that makes sense theoretically in the future. I could see it today being transformative for all of these people. And that I'd always been interested in. I've been like Bitcoin since 2013 and in 2014 and always been interested, but kind of felt like it was a really cool technology in search of a problem. And that was the moment that it clicked for me. I was like, finance is the killer use case and I need to start looking at what's happening here.
Yeah. And we've kind of like speed run all of finance in the course of 7 years, which is wild. I was pretty similar. Like I had always, you know, stayed up to date on Bitcoin and understood what it was able to provide, but it really wasn't until DeFi came along that I was really like radicalized, if you want to call it that, into believing like this is the future. Like everything is going to be settled on chain in the future at some point, or even if it's just dollars. Like if that's the end goal, like if you have trillions of dollars of loans which are moved on chain, and then you have this like global permissionless dollar system. I think there was a video by Mariano Conti from DevCon. I think it was DevCon like 6 years ago, where he talks about how he just takes all of his money and he like buys ETH with it, and then he buys some DAI as well too. And he's able to escape the 500% or 100% Argentinian inflation. Yeah, yeah. And it was just like, I had lived outside the United States as well too, and I kind of like understood the difficulties of like moving dollars back and forth between different places. And it's just it doesn't take much. Like if you live in the States, you might wonder about like, oh, like what is DeFi really for? Or like what is it trying to provide? But like as soon as you go outside, it's like, okay, the dollar is highly restricted. It's difficult to move between banks. There's a slowness to it, which if you're trying to move large amounts of money, like it becomes very difficult. And now we have a way that you can transact billions of dollars and also support billions of dollars of loans through this great system that has been built out.
Yeah, and I think that like that's like a good point where if you live in America, you might be like, okay, like this, what problem is this really solving? And all of these technologies are just like, it's almost like binary. It's not important until it is. And I think that like recent discourse around like Operation Choke Point, like 2.0, and crypto founders getting debanked, or just people not even onboarding them, kind of makes you understand like how much of personal discretion we all are when it comes to the banking system, and how it can be turned off like without a moment's notice, right? So it's really critical infrastructure. I mean, just the fact that there is an alternative, and then that's not even speaking about like all the different ways that it's actually orders of magnitude better. Like if you've ever done like a wire and have tried to track it down, there's just like a million examples, but it's actually just better financial rails and pretty superior technology.
Yeah. Were you when did you leave Facebook? Was it 2020?
So if this is going to the Libra stuff, I was actually like in Facebook when Libra was happening. Israel, like Meta had acquired a startup. Basically, like Tel Aviv became this hub for different companies that they had acquired, starting with some of the internet connectivity things, but then also like an AI-driven customer success bot that was supposed to be the kind of the risk and customer success solution for Libra, the wallet and the stablecoin initiative that they had. And even then, it was like, I was interested in the technology. I'd already been kind of pilled on electronic money, but meeting with the groups, they're like, yeah, the tech has been ready for a year. We're just like waiting on regulatory approval.
Oh, wow.
And I'd seen like 6 months become 12 months, become 18 months. And I was like, this is probably not like a good place for me to be full time, like because it's just blocked until they ultimately disbanded it. But it was a project that had incredible amounts of like excitement. I think since then, like, me and a bunch of other friends have spun out to go full-time crypto, also the Aptos team, the Sweet team, and a bunch of others. But there are a lot of people who are really passionate. The tech was there, but we were just blocked.
Yeah. There's this great thread from David Marcus who came out and talked about like how Libra was killed. It's a great read. I don't know if you've seen it. But essentially just said that, that Facebook could have turned it on in like 2021, like 2020, 2021, and brought stable coins to like 2 billion people overnight, or just done, like a US rollout, right, for their marketplace or whatever they wanted to use it in. And it got shut down. So like Jay Powell and the Fed and a couple of other regulatory agencies just came in and said like, this isn't going to happen. Like, don't go down this road. And then we also had those hearings on Capitol Hill, and really just a shame that was never able to come to pass. I know that many economists might have some issues with onboarding that many people into like a privatized money at scale, but I don't know. Hopefully with this new administration, we're actually able to see like these big private companies take a lot of the innovation that has happened in the DeFi space and kind of bring it into their own systems. Because for everything bad that's happened at the kind of like large scale regulatory level, the Fed's going after Facebook and Coinbase and others, is really allowed the DeFi builders to kind of do a lot of interesting testing and experimenting, and really have the space to have capital allocation that might have gone to these other companies had they just deployed a solution already. Who knows what would have happened to like Aave or some of the other big projects that you guys support, had like a Facebook or one of the other majors been able to come in and just like suck out a ton of market share during that period.
It's really interesting because it's like the glass half full for our industry, because I mean, we're speaking to like a lot of these companies now, more on the like Web2 peering into Web3, like big Fortune 500 companies that want to onboard users and build out use cases for them for holding kind of value in their version of the wallet. And like one of the trivial use cases, like, okay, if you want someone to hold like in your app, you need to give them access to kind of savings opportunities or the ability to generate yield, right? So like, would there have been like some, I don't know, either Facebook equivalent to like an Aave, like a savings account or an integration with someone else? Almost certainly. And then I think now that that we hope to see with the administration that these walls are being turned down, what does that look like? Are they going to adopt like an Aave or like a GMX or Jupiter? Do they build their own? And I think because of
with World Liberty Financial, they forked Aave.
Yeah, that's true. The literal like president-elect has forked Aave.
And are they using Chaos Labs for their Oracle system?
Yeah, so they
so there you go. The new administration,
they're using us. They're going to use Risk effectively. Like there's this program for Aave called the Friendly White Label. And then they so it's like you can come into your own brand, which they're doing with World Liberty, but you inherit basically all of like the Aave technology and teams. So we're going to start working with them on that. But I think that's a really interesting point. Like the years where the industry was shunned, let the builders build. And now, like if you're an enterprise looking at like, oh, I want a lending market, or I want to be able to do a stablecoin swap, you understand that like there's no reason for you to build it in-house, and you're going to use like one of these existing technologies that has processed hundreds of billions or trillions of notional. And that actually gave like a right to exist to our industry. Whereas I think if Facebook had gone in the green light and some of these other companies who were like looking in, it's unclear that we would have been able to kind of create this huge gap. I never had thought of it like that. So that's interesting.
Yeah, it's wild that the incoming president is using Chaos Labs for like oracles and risk management.
Let's see them go live. But it's pretty trippy. I think if you would have told us that in 2018, it would have sent the team for a ride.
Yeah. I mean, so what was it that like, I mean, you talked about your like we can call it like early DeFi radicalization, but what was the thing that really got you to jump in feet first?
Yeah, it was right after the army. I think it was I was in the army for 4 years and did reserves for like 8 in special forces. And while it was like a meaningful experience, I think that I was feeling extremely anti-authoritarian and like just really did dislike like these big systems. And I read the white paper, and it was also I kind of finished army in 2013. Bitcoin was starting to kind of get steam. Joined the army in 2009, like right after the financial crisis, and it just spoke to me. And the story is actually funny. So I worked for like a really bad startup, like horrible. They could not fundraise at all. And the founders were like, look, we're short on like fiat, but we have this Bitcoin thing. Do you want to get like salary like in Bitcoin? And I was like, I got to learn about this thing first, and read the white paper and was like hooked. I was like a first year like electrical engineering comp sci student. And that's when I started kind of going down the rabbit hole and getting really interested from a technology perspective. At the same time, however, it was like the years leading up to the 2017 ICO bubble. And many of the use cases kind of, at least back then, they were like, we're going to build Uber on the blockchain. We're going to build Spotify on the blockchain. We're going to do Facebook on the blockchain. And it was just unclear to me, like why the solution with a chain was better than the one without. So it was kind of disillusioned by the use cases of like the technology is really cool. Need to figure out like what problem this solves really well. And then when I spending the time in Africa and understanding how I think 65 or to 70% of the world is unbanked or underbanked, that's when it clicked for me. I was like, there's a real problem here that can be serviced by the technology, and I need to lean in. So that was like the arch.
Yeah, but like, what was it that got you to quit Facebook?
Honestly, which is like a coming kind of full circle moment. It was understanding DAI and Aave and just seeing like and reading the code. I think so. I spent a lot of time before leaving reading, forking, and playing with different versions of Aave, Yearn Finance, Compound, and Maker. And on one hand, this was mind you like much earlier versions, but I was looking at the code. I was seeing that it was really like how elegantly it solved a lot of these issues. But at the same time, coming from Facebook, I was like, wow, we are so in the beginning. There's so much innovation that can be done here. These applications can be made way better. So it just made me feel like it was like very obvious to me. I was like, there's this massive opportunity people don't understand yet. Like I'm reading the source code, which is cool because what other industry dealing with billions of dollars can you just read all the source code? But also in reading it, I was like, there's all these features and like optimizations that you could build out. And I need to be spending my time here. And it was 4 years at Facebook. I always knew that I was going to leave and build another company. So the timing was right, and I jumped into the water.
I look back on it, and having seen the history of how like all of this early DeFi stuff played out, just how like naive but optimistic everybody was about we can recreate the entire financial system on chain and do all this crazy mechanism design of I don't know, like algorithmic stablecoins or like untested lending protocols or like new ways to get leverage on assets. And we're just going to try it and throw money at the wall and see what sticks. And
a lot of money.
Yeah, a lot of money.
Yeah.
And it's just wild how much chaos there came at the expense of, well, how much innovation there came at the expense of all the chaos that came along with it.
Yeah. They say that history doesn't rhyme, but history doesn't repeat itself, but it rhymes. And I think that's like very much what you see like playing out in DeFi. Like we started with these very, very super clean like ideals, and which is great. That's where you want to start. And then as we look to scale these things, like I think crypto is really good at marketing too. Like I won't get into like specific examples, but we have this habit of like taking really old concepts that exist in traditional finance in the world, giving it like a really sexy name. And then like when you squint really like look at it like, oh, this is actually that, or that it's really similar. And we end up like learning similar lessons. At the same time, the underlying technology is really different, and there is innovation in the space. And I think this is what it looks like because we were like the ugly child of like technology for many years when we weren't at the peak of a cycle, and there wasn't kind of clarity on the right way to do things. All of the guardrails were ripped off, and just people came in and experimented. And there's a lot of sometimes there's a ton of capital at stake, which I think in any other industry you wouldn't necessarily see at the early stages that we were. Like sometimes seeing the TVL and looking at the code, you're like, oh my god, like what's happening here? But a lot of, I guess, like testing and production in DeFi, and just learning from mistakes and iterating rapidly. Sometimes I wish that we would learn more from mistakes and not repeat them, but it's part of kind of growing up and maturing as an industry.
Yeah, and it's interesting how like your first introductions to DeFi, I mean, like the space was so much smaller at the time, but like your first introductions was to like, was it still Ethlin, or had it transitioned to Aave at that point?
Yeah, it was when I was getting into the space, it was still eFund, and then they had rebranded, and yeah, so things were quite different. Compound had just launched, and there was competition around that. MPR was starting to grow, it was Psy originally. It was
Yes.
only backed by ETH and kind of multi-collateral, and then started accepting RWA-backed stablecoins as well. So things were quite different. And yeah, it just also, I think, reminds you, it like in this space, how quickly things change, because things that like you came in like knowing is, oh, this is like a fundamental pillar like of the space, like a year later they don't exist, or there's like a new thing. So things are quite different back then.
Yeah. Well, I think it's interesting that like your first introductions are the companies now that you're supporting with Chaos Labs. Like Aave is one of your biggest clients, and you've been able to grow with them over time.
Yeah, for me, it's like the other companies that I had were like not at this scale. They were bootstrapped, and also I had self-funded them and brought them to kind of to cash flow positive, and very kind of small. And I think when I started this company, I couldn't imagine. I was like learning about the space via Aave, reading their code, and today, it's been over 2 years since we started working together, and I think we have like a pretty meaningful kind of contribution to where they are today. So I think it's just always like, also like inside the company, we feel kind of privileged to be like in an industry that we believe that is already big and only going to grow, and have like our imbue like our stamp on it, whether it's the methodologies, the tools, the risk oracles, the different things that we're bringing to the table, and then just like always treat like every engagement, every customer like with the same like amount of appreciation and respect, which I also think is like I would like to say like one of the things I think define us as a company.
So when you guys started, you just had like was it self-funded, or did you have a like friends and family round?
It was self-funded.
Yeah.
I didn't want to raise capital like my other businesses beforehand, and but this one, it crossed $1 million in booked revenue really quickly, individually, and we were ramping up to, I think, the bull market of 2020, a lot of inbound, and I met like so I was just realizing, I was like, hey, like nothing I've built previously has grown this fast, and really kind of realizing the demand, and once I understood the opportunity and built my own thesis around why it made sense to do this at a venture scale, that is when I raised. But I'd already crossed like 1 million, going on 2 million, like independently, had customers, were in production before raising that initial seed.
Yeah, and that was back in 2023. You guys raised 20 million from.
It was announced in 2023, but I think that we either closed around in late 2021 or 2022. I might be getting the dates wrong, but the company has been around for over 3 years. I think going on 4 soon.
Yeah, and just like a laundry list of the, I guess, top funds and investors in the space. I mean, that must be extremely validating to have, like Balaji and Naval, and just as individuals, but also like Coinbase Investor or Coinbase Ventures, Uniswap, Lightspeed, Galaxy, like to go from, you had struggled with your other startups, right, to raise money to kind of get going, and then all of a sudden something clicks, and now you have the best and the brightest kind of like all signing on to throw money at you.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't say so. I think just to kind of continue from, I was very anti-authoritarian, like after the army, right? And like one of the things that, besides just liking to build, that spoke to me so much about like doing a startup was complete independence. So it wasn't like, I just was against like venture capital, and so that was like more of the issue, or not the issue, just like, I guess, my disposition. But of course, like as someone who values like entrepreneurship, like Balaji and Naval, these were the people that I were like reading their books and their blog posts and listening to their videos and trying to like learn about like how to approach this. And then meeting with them was at the time, it was super surreal for me. And I think today it's a huge privilege to be able to just have them and the rest of the great cap table like a message away. Yeah, so that was really interesting. But I think also kind of the second that you do that, not to take away from it, but also the goalposts, as they should, they move very quickly, and you're like, okay, I have like this cap table. People have literally given us money and invested, and now we have a responsibility to execute on that vision that we spoke about. And venture funding is like super helpful, like the whole other discussion. But at the end of the day, it's not what makes or I mean, it can break a company, but it's not what will make a company.
Yeah.
Like you need to build a product that people want, and you need to like build technology and get customers and retain customers. And investors are there to help with very pointed asks if you know how to ask. But in the end, you need to build a team, and it's real life. You go to work.
Yeah. Well, I just think it's interesting for your fundraising story is that, like, you know, the original investors are like core crypto people, you know, like Castle Island with Nick and Balaji, and then Coinbase and Uniswap and Galaxy. But PayPal was there as well too, and they've also led your most recent round in September as well. Like, what is it like? PayPal's been trying to jump as quickly as possible, but at the same time, kind of like dip their toes into crypto. I know they probably have a lot more regulatory oversight when it comes to like the products that they release. Same thing that Facebook had. And here they are on your cap table, right? Not just once, but twice now, or sorry, 3 times now. And you know, they're ramping up to be like a giant of industry. That same type of company that Facebook was planning to be with Libra, like PayPal is really moving as quickly as possible towards that. Both having their like core business plus like a like banking functions that they can offer interest to their clients, and then soon to be having, well, like already having this like fledgling stablecoin that they've released and are integrating into a bunch of different apps and networks.
Yeah, PayPal had been great, and they've been early supporters. I kind of knew a lot of, so PayPal had, at the time, I think, excluding maybe Stripe's acquisition of Bridge, they had made the largest, I think, crypto acquisition with Curve, which was not Curve, the stablecoin swap, but it was an early kind of MPC wallet that was a competitor to Fireblocks, and the team was based in Tel Aviv. And kind of knew like the team and knew that they had interest. At the same time, we were super early, and like when you think of like a Fortune 500 investing, you know, I took that initial call and didn't think that it was relevant at the stage, but more as like, okay, let's you know, open up this line of communication. So to have them on the cap table is like, when you, I think for me, it's like I have always my conviction and hypothesis on what I'm doing, but I also try to be grounded in truth, and I want to see like external signal, like in validation. So that was a great moment to get them on board. It also helped a lot, like with, I think, hiring when you have like these names on your cap table, at least early before you have the customer base and product. So it was very, very cool. And then just you had mentioned also kind of Meta, and that Meta had Libra, now PayPal have PYUSD, and they're doing other things and integrating into Venmo. But I wouldn't count Meta or Zuck out ever.
Yeah.
Today, because of the infrastructure, it's just really easy to spin up a stablecoin, and I think it's a lot about distribution. PayPal obviously have it, super bullish on everything they're doing, but I think we're going to see with this new administration, like an influx of large companies who maybe had dipped their toes in before, and just got blocked for many reasons. But I think the ambition and realizing the opportunity is still the same. Just maybe today they feel like they won't be hindered by regulators.
Well, you talked about signal there that some of these other investors were seeing. Like, what specifically is it that Chaos Labs has built or is building right now that kind of provided that signal for them?
Yeah. So I think today, like the focus and the vision is clearer, and I think it's different than related, but different than what it was 4 years ago when we got started. I think, you know, everyone has maybe a little bit of different thesis, but just going top down, like if you believe in crypto, today we're hovering, I think, over 3 trillion in global market cap. But let's say in the future, the next decade, a 10 or $20 trillion market cap asset, you know that it's inherently volatile as a new emerging asset class. So just as like, obviously we're not going to get there without best in class risk management and security. So the opportunity is like, what does, the number one company in that category look like in a 10 or $20 trillion like industry in the future? How much value is there in doing that? So I think that is like the question. And then because it's not like a speculative use case, like, oh, you're building financial rails and you're dealing with value, you need risk management. Like, it's not like you're not making a bet on user behavior changing. Like, you need risk and you need security management. It's just about like, is this the right team? Are they well positioned to do it? Do we think that they can execute? And I think that's the step that they need to make in understanding it. And then there's just a ton of market comps. Like, you look at companies in traditional finance that are doing risk, that are building like kind of financial services solutions and security. It's one of the largest markets, and for good reason. So I think for a lot of companies, like including PayPal and some of the companies on our cap table who traditionally didn't invest, because we have like Bessemer and General Catalyst and Lightspeed, who have been like more selective like with their deployments into crypto, it just felt non-speculative versus maybe something that can be amazing, but at the time it was like NFTs. Like, is it going to be here in 10 years? Like, maybe yes, but you're making a bet on kind of this new user behavior or valuing something new which doesn't exist before, if that makes sense.
What do you actually mean when you say you're kind of evaluating risk? I know that like all the companies that are in the crypto space that we've spoken to on Leviathan, they're kind of like they're all homegrown, right? They don't really come from like core finance. They're mostly like people in the trenches who've just been here a long time, and it eventually ended up building like risk companies, which, if you look at the like TradFi space, are pretty integral. But you haven't seen any of those like major banks or funds or anybody else kind of take that leap into crypto yet. Like, where is the separation there, and like what exactly are you guys evaluating?
Yeah. So today, first of all, just like when you speak about risk, it's like an umbrella term, because there's financial risk, there's market risk, liquidity risk, counterparty risk, smart contract risk, governance risk, regulatory risk, Oracle risk, or all of these different things. So kind of different folks and different teams focus on different areas. We aim to have a holistic solution. Like, over the years, we built solutions for each one of those verticals, and they're continuing to expand. But I also think that like when you think about like risk and finance, like, yes, you're trying to solve the same issues that you are in traditional finance, in terms of like not taking outside risk for like undersized returns and being able to kind of size your bets and your exposure. But just the way to kind of ensuring that is just fundamentally different, because everything is happening on a blockchain,
Mm-hmm.
right? And everything is running through smart contracts, and they're immutable, and you're using an Oracle, which is this external data source. And also like the contracts application state and risk itself, risk management is transparent and available to everyone, which also doesn't exist. Like, when you think of a bank, a large bank or financial institution, they may have like a several 100-person risk organization internally. And they're very secretive, like about the data and their books and their positions in various assets, and counterparties don't know like where they sit, if they're healthy, if they can meet commitments. So because of that secrecy, like internally, there doesn't exist a company, I think, like Chaos Labs that can do something as holistic, just because the teams are very tend to do a lot of things in-house. But because of the nature of the blockchain, because everything is transparent, because everybody can access the data and build their own pipelines, and even have better, which is something that we're proud of, have better pipelines and more accurate data and accounting than some of the core team members themselves, and something that we can help with. This is why, as a category, it can exist in the way that it does in crypto. And then, like, crypto is like this weird Venn diagram of, you have with the smart contracts and the ledgers and the distributed systems and the algorithms and the cryptography, it's super multidisciplinary. So when you think about like, who could be like valuable in a setting of risk, I think there's no one that has all of the prerequisites. Like, if you came from traditional finance and you were on the Goldman risk team, sure, you might understand kind of like market risk and volatility and liquidity, but you probably don't understand smart contract risk and security, and you definitely don't understand like Oracle risk. So it's like, where did you want to start from? And then I think that from the different teams that speak about risk and security and that work in this space, you see kind of these varied backgrounds. And I think what you want is just a well-rounded team that can and have like basically world-class expertise on each one of these vectors. So that is like in 2019, there's no such thing as like a DeFi risk expert. Like DeFi as a word had just been branded. So what does that mean? And fast forward now, and you see some groups that are pretty experienced, and some of it is homegrown. But going back to what we said, like history doesn't repeat itself, but it rhymes. Like ultimately, I think it's like important to realize that many of the same guarantees and assurances that we're aiming for, and this is where speaking with the Fortune 100, 500 and financial institutions becomes like an easier conversation. We're trying to solve for the same things, but the technology, the execution environment, the architecture is different, so you need to approach it differently and know like where to adapt to solve for that.
Yeah, and you guys really had the luxury. I mean, it was extremely competitive, but being with Aave through this growth period, you said you were there at the beginning, like messaging out like Stani and Mark, and being able to work through them to the point where, like, I would say that if you're making like a ranking of DeFi protocols, there's like S tier, which is like just use Aave, and then everybody else is catching up at the moment. Like Aave is the gold standard, and everybody else is fighting for incumbency. So it's like Aave is the best lending platform out there. There is no second best at the moment, and it really shows in the amount of TVL that they've been able to capture. I think they must be breaking all-time highs. I haven't looked at the DeFi Llama chart.
Yeah, we passed all-time highs last week and growing.
Was it last week?
Yeah, I mean, I think the past few weeks continue like new all-time highs. Yeah. I think that like, look, I think there's, when you have a really good group of people, it's not just chaos, and they're working consistently like over time. So we have BGD, Ernesto and team, some of the best smart contract engineers in the world, and we have Zeller leading the way on growth, and we have Matthew Graham from Token Logic, and Llama Risk recently joined, and I think Sertora always doing meaningful work. With a clear kind of direction, it shows, right? And like, even if you're like a new like upstart, combining consistency, direction, and hard work, there's no way to kind of easily leapfrog that. So that is, I think, what you're seeing today is it's always the success is always trailing, right? Like for many years there was a lot of hard work to bring the application to where it is today. I also think that obviously the market is up now and things are better, but when we joined Aave was in a dire state, burning through the treasury, had a ton of technical debt, had recently attempted to been hit by the Avi Eisenberg CRV short attack. Things were not in a good state. Fast forward today, I think the run rate is like over 120 million. One of the most, I think maybe the most profitable, potentially, excluding some DEXs, DeFi applications today in the world. So there was a lot of work. Aave had like ETHLand to Aave had like emerged as like a leader, but like in the downturn of the market, post Luna, post FTX, the DAO was in a bad state. And we came in along with other teams and put together a plan that took over a year to fully execute, to clean up all that debt, figure out like what the strategy is for scaling across different networks, and just really building like quietly. And today it pays dividends. That's what it's looking like, but it was really like a process.
Yeah, it's incredible how much Aave has been able to go through in just a short period of time. I mean, you look back to just since 2022, right? Not anything before then in like the earlier days, but just since 2022, you had the Depeg of Steph, which people thought was going to be like the end for Lido and DeFi in general. You had the Luna Depeg, you had the Avi Eisenberg attack that took place as well too. It's just like numerous other like economic and market forces like pushing through, and they've been able to survive and really thrive now, and so have a bunch of other DeFi teams. And I think this is the one thing that I've taken from the 2022 cycle. It's like, in the moment when like everything was blowing up, when Luna was crashing, when FTX was going down, all the DeFi projects that and it's not just survivorship bias, but all the kind of pedigree ones that had been building at the time, like withstood all of it, and were able to come out like scathed, of course, from the market downturn. But ultimately, like they had built these robust systems which were able to navigate like probably some of the most extreme market volatility that we'll ever see in crypto. I don't
be careful.
Like when are we ever going
famous last words? Yeah.
But when are we ever going to see like an asset, which I believe Luna was what, 40 billion, 50 billion at the time?
50, I think. Yeah.
Yeah. Go from 50 to 0 overnight. Like all on chain with no market, with no like circuit breakers, no way to stop the market, no way to shut anything down. And have these DeFi protocols come out like still functioning and still having users, not blown up, still able to process stuff and make it through the entire time. And I think that's really like a testament of what has been built. And that was the real point at which was like, okay, like everything's blown up. But it's all transparent now. We can go back, we can collect all that data. We can see what like specifically on, we can see like block by block, we can go back and recreate everything. There's so much data that we can pull here into the future, and everything's surviving, right? Because like when before that, back in when BitMEX had to flip the circuit breaker to keep Bitcoin from going to 0, I really thought like things were getting very bad then. We didn't have the robust like DeFi systems that we had in place in 2022, and it definitely felt way worse than it did coming out of that period. And I'm very thankful that we've been able to go through like the fire and the flames and emerge as like this robust, battle hardened sector.
We'll definitely have the scars to show for it. I think though, even today, there's still so much to do on that front. We recently launched the first edge risk oracle into Aave, and what risk oracles do, you can think of it as like a real-time risk API for your system, right? So it can, whether you want to integrate a kill switch, update funding rates, interest rates, supply caps, price impact fees, any parameter you effectively want it affected basically by real-time market conditions. And today this isn't the case. Like, GMX and Aave and soon a bunch of other applications that we work with are going to adopt it. But if you look across the industry, most of the work is manual. So like someone will wake up or get like an alert or like a Twitter message and be like, oh, I have to like write a payload and deploy it to chain.
Well, not just always one, like a team of people who have to get on a multi-sig. And
hopefully it's a team of people and not just this one person. The also have color there, but that's how it works today, right? And also the issue is that like a lot of these applications weren't designed with that foresight. So for example, I think like a crazy canonical example is the USDC Depeg. And Aave, I think, is like one of the most decentralized protocols today. And there was like this minimum like governance threshold of like 3 days at the time to when you could update parameters in the application. And this all happened. It was like a Thursday afternoon. There was like kind of rumors of SVB going under. 8% of USDC reserves were locked into the bank, and USDC started plummeting, right? And then also like a popular trade that you saw was people just dumping all their USDC into Aave and borrowing, unaffected high quality assets. Could be USDT, Bitcoin, Ethereum, whatever the case was, which would have left them absolutely. I think there was real FUD, like
really existential. Like when USDC was collapsing, I didn't know if I was going to have to be like updating my resume and shooting in places. Like it was really one of those days where it's like, oh my god, like if USDC blows up, it's taking so many people down with it.
We're done. We're cooked. Yeah.
Like it's going to be years before we recover.
And the crazy thing was we were managing like Benki and Aave and just a bunch of other applications at the time. But Chaos is a startup. Like SVB was our main bank, and we didn't get out. And so I didn't tell the team, and everybody was worried about Aave. I was like, guys, I'm worried about us too, because I don't know what's going to happen. But that weekend, we did all the work that we could across all the other applications, but Aave was a good example. We literally could not make a change.
Man. So Aave is your main customer who had like massive exposure to USDC, plus you were using SVB as your like core primary bank. That must have been like Oh man, like adding several gray hairs and taking a couple of years off your life during that one weekend.
I was like, look, it's out of my hands. It kind of relevant now to what everyone's speaking to, like with Operation Choke Point. Like SUV was the only bank that would bank us, and that was after being rejected like 3 times.
Mm-hmm.
So that was how we made that decision. And like we needed a bank, we needed to pay salaries in America. But I was like, look, I need the government to backstop this, and I'm just going to do the best that we can, like right now for the customers, because for ourselves, we're in the same situation, and there wasn't much we could do. And I didn't tell the team, but I had like a message that that I was prepared for, like on Monday, because I think salaries were due the next week.
Mm-hmm.
But
yeah, because
crazy.
Yeah, because SVB was shut down on Friday. Saturday, everything went wild. You had the Depeg overnight in the 9 hours there, and then on Sunday, I believe it was Sunday evening when the FDIC came out and said like, okay, we're essentially guaranteeing all the deposits here. Everybody's okay.
Yeah, there was effectively like SVB is I think it was the largest bank for startups at the time, and
sixth largest bank in America.
Yeah, and they had to make some type of announcement before markets opened, or they would have gone crazy. So we were like on edge for that, but it was unclear if they would fully back everything, if there was a haircut, So everybody was waiting for that, and people were speculating on USDC price back then, knowing that 8% of the reserves were in SVB. A lot of market activity, and yeah, I think it's also, I mean, FTX and Terra aside, like one of the top 3 crises in DeFi is actually a traditional finance like crisis, which just always reminds you, I think, that how important like risk management is, and that all of this stuff can be fragile like at times, and you need to be prepared for everything. And just connecting to what we spoke about early in the conversation, like I think because of that, like risk and security sometimes are like the unsung heroes of these things, because if they're doing their job really well, you shouldn't hear about it, right? Like a consumer or user shouldn't hear about it. You should just be working in the back, making sure that you're safe, and that there's great UX, and that you can access the services that you want to when you want to.
Well, how do you look at a product when you're making it and say, okay, there are things that are going to happen in the future, like the Luna blow up or FTX or USDC, which are beyond our like wildest like models that we can build, right? Just completely black swan events that may never happen again, right? But are so existential to the entire like base of foundation of our industry. Like, how do you build that into like a risk model?
Yeah, so we spoke a little bit about this, I think, before the stream started, but like risk is very much a science, but it's also like an art to like a certain extent, and not all the considerations, requirements, concerns can be represented well like in a quantitative model. So there's also like a lot of qualitative work. I think Luna specifically was actually very easy to see in a quantitative model. Like the design was just super concerning from the jump, and that's like a very different use case than SVB going under. So I think it's like you need to deeply like understand the mechanism design. I think a big area that we're pushing in is also requiring a lot more transparency also on the off-chain risk, as RWAs continue to grow and represent more and more of the underlying value in the industry. Just because it's an RWA, I think a lot of people are like, oh, it's like totally fine. It's backed by short-term treasury bills. But what does that mean? Like, where is it custodied? How is the minting happen? Where did the keys to the multi-sig live? There's a ton of risk there that has like played out time after time.
In case of bankruptcy, like where are you in the table?
Are you bankruptcy remote? Like what jurisdiction like are you in? All these things today that like just I think quote unquote degens are maybe less familiar with, but just equally as large, if not larger, like risk vector. But I think for the risk manager, it's like for us, I think accountability and ownership is like 100. It's like one of the core values of the company. So when you're making recommendations, for me, it's like it's important that it's something that we can live with, right? So like look, the safest thing is just turning off the application and freezing. Like you'll have no bad debt, no insolvency. You also won't have a business.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's like going through the risks. It's like what is acceptable? How are we hedging? Are we hedging? How do we remediate if something goes wrong? So look, if all the banks in America like blow up like overnight and it all goes to zero, that's like there might be much worse problems than some stable coins, but that's like a risk that we're willing to take versus like you see a mechanism like Terra Luna or something like that, and you're like, yeah, this is pretty brittle and the risk reward here is not worth it. So it's like, what risks are you willing to do you think that are reasonable? How do you size them? Because it's not binary. It's not like, oh, this is fine, let's like allow infinite supply of this token. Do you have a remediation plan if something goes wrong? Like how do you like alleviate like the risk of insolvency, of bad debt across the application? And then just constant monitoring so that you're informed, because also when something happens, in the case of SVB, there was an opportunity, for example, some startups were able to, even though the queue grew very large, to redeem, others weren't. And you just also, it needs to be real time, right? So you can't get your updates from Twitter, or you need to be able to get the news and then act on it. And that's where edge oracles come in as well.
Yeah. And so the edge is really providing like price, risk, and proofs as you guys have it.
Yeah.
Like pricing is just like the oracle pricing. Risk is the risk modeling. Like you're able to update the like LTVs or turn off the application, or do all these other like complex like contract management that a normal person would need, like a multi-sig, and like some time for. It takes a lot of time to adjust those things. But with the edge oracle, you can adjust those in real time as market volatility is playing out.
Yeah, so really important to note that it's in real time, but it's not carte blanche. So it's not like you can update anything like at a whim. And typically the way that these things work is that every parameter has a policy. And the policy is governance approved, right? So like for parameter X, you have a bound in which you can optimistically make an update. Anything that is out of those bounds requires like a full governance cycle. And then also you can control there's like a policy on the permissions. So yes, Chaos can sign on it, but it could be the policy of your application that it requires 2 additional signatures. So we can like push the recommendation on chain quickly, but you decide what the mechanism is for ingesting that recommendation and propagating it through the application. So it's very tiered. You can like really control like how you want to do it. And obviously, like, yeah, you can do it real time. Some people want to have a time lock, some people want to have permissions, and it's very easy to customize and to adjust to meet those requirements.
And you guys are servicing some of the largest. I mean, we've mentioned Aave several times. GMX is also on there as well too. Wintermute, really like the titans of DeFi or all your clients. I'm really interested in like where you think all this is going, right? The thing that's been really brewing in the back of my head is just the emergence of AI and agents that we have, and what they're going to add, especially for like a risk company like yours. How are you guys like experimenting with this at all, or planning for it in the next couple of years?
Yes. So I mean, recently we published a research piece with the head of model evaluation at OpenAI. Some of the leadership invested in the last round. I think like if you go back years to the first version of our platform, it was an agent-based simulation platform. So we're investing heavily in it. And I think we're going to, the recent prediction markets were resolved with AI oracles, basically using language models like OpenAI's ChatGPT, Anthropic's Claude, and so on, in order to determine the outcome of elections. We're very, very excited by it. I think that from a risk perspective, like when you look at this generation of language models and things that the technology can do, we're really well positioned to kind of benefit from a lot of the things that technology unlocks. There's still a lot of it, like anything. There's a big gap between understanding what's possible and then bringing it to a state in which it's ready to be used in production. That's what the team has been working on. And we're going to release like a slew of I think pretty innovative products over the next few months and years that are going to first of all, like just take risk management to the next level, continue pushing the envelope, but also that have applications for other areas in the industry that can benefit from this too. So for us, that's a huge, like, I think until now, what Chaos has done is we built the risk platform, we've built oracles, and there's a lot of use cases which are unlocked with AI, which are going to see the light of the day over the next few weeks and months.
Yeah. The thing that I thought was really interesting was that, like, with the prediction markets and oracles specifically, it's the ability to kind of like widen out just beyond prices and have like full scale total information awareness of what's happening in the world, and then figure out how to bring that into these like micro markets, or, you know, like just like just stuff that doesn't get viewed on the front page of the Poly market, right? Like maybe a prediction market where $100 or something is at stake for some like micro event that two AI agents or several AI agents are monitoring, right? Like that's really the future. And I think that what we have a lot of like unexplored territory to go after. And it seems like with Chaos Labs that you guys are like primed to head in that direction.
Yeah, I think like a good like analogy metaphor for it is there are a few, but like just generally, we spoke about video being like the vast majority of data like on the internet. But if you zoom out like even further, like how much of the internet's data is structured versus unstructured? Well, so you have orders of magnitude more data that's unstructured, and a lot of it is extremely valuable. I think like transformer architectures and a lot of these language models do really well when trained on this data and extracting the signal. But we're really like, I wouldn't even, still in the first inning basically, in being able to build kind of systems which reliably extract those signals and apply them to different workflows and business cases. That's where we're spending a ton of our time, a ton of our resources. If you think of, you know, V0 oracles, like risk teams, they worked with what was available to them, including us like years ago, which was like numerical, financial, time series data. And then did like a lot of work to try and like extrapolate and have a better understanding of what's happening in the market. But these technologies just basically open up like a trove of data that previously wasn't considered feasible to do, like just without intensive human manual labor. That's huge. And in prediction markets, I think is like a good case study of different types of data and like oracle resolutions that you can do, which are not like these, you know, binary threshold driven things or things that are described in like natural language. But it's not just prediction markets. It's going to apply. And I think also you're already seeing it way broader than crypto only use cases. So it's really, really exciting. I think that there is, I think that language models and just OpenAI and Anthropic like as tools, it can be confusing for like a lot of people because you can get a ton of value out of it by just by simply prompting, right? And you can see that it's super valuable. But again, there's a huge gap between that and bringing something to a state in which it's production ready. Like if you think that you're going to just like spin up a Python script and be able to resolve like multi-million-dollar markets, like I have bad news for you. It doesn't work like that. And I think that is where like you're going to see a lot of the value unlock in teams that invest in training these models, fine-tuning them for the use cases, building engineering systems around it to bring it to a state where it can be used in order to move and settle real value. It's going to take a little time, but all of the ingredients, all of the technology, all of the infrastructure is there. So we're super, super excited about it.
Yeah. Yeah. And it seems that like you guys are like future-proofed and ready for this to come, and like with the research that you've been putting out and also with the Edge product that has just come out, like acting as this new like decentralized oracle. It's pretty awesome. And I would recommend everybody to go check out the docs. You've got a bunch of stuff on your blog that you can go check out, and it's really, really awesome. So yeah, I think we've kind of gotten to the end. Omer, I really want to thank you for coming on to this. Great today. Enjoy chatting. And you're on Twitter, right? Where can people go and find you?
Yeah. I'm on Twitter, Omer, Omera Goldberg. So just my name on Twitter, and chaos_labs. is the handle. I really had fun today, and like I said earlier, you have an open invite to the office. So
Yeah.
whenever you're in Williamsburg, come through. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, we'll do a roundtable soon.